Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 967. My opponent started off with the rare move E3, the Venet Kruijs opening or something like that. I'm not Dutch, so I don't know how that's pronounced. Anyway, this is a pretty flexible move. It's not yet anything too bad. The normal replies here, as you can see, are D5 and E5. I've tried E5 before just to show this, but this kind of, typically D4 is played here, not E4. That would be kind of a weird transposition. And you just get this exchange, and it looks like a very simplified position after E5. Everything is absolutely symmetric, and there's an open E file. So just doesn't seem like that interesting a position to me. So I like to play with D5 against this opening. And you can see it was the top choice there. And then a normal continuation from here might be knight to F3, say knight F6, D4, E6, and we've gotten into a kind of Kali system or Kala system. Anyway, so that would be a fine opening. And it's true of this E3 line is that you can transpose into a lot of openings, none of which are especially challenging for the black player, but they're solid for white, so it's not a bad move off the bat. But then he followed up after he played E3. I played D4. He went to G4, which you can see it's actually listed here, but there are no example games. And the chess engine thinks that white is just in really bad shape here. It actually thinks this is a losing move. It gives a evaluation of somewhere around -1.5 to -2. So that's usually enough to be a losing game at this point. And the best response is maybe E5. And you can see there's no more in the opening book after that, but E5 is a logical move, just taking over the center and not worrying about this pawn. It's actually defended by the queen. The one virtue of that E3 move is that white can play G4 without losing the pawn, like it often happens in the Grob opening. And then black will often follow up with knight c6, or could the chess engine actually likes playing knight c6 immediately. It also liked that e5 move. Anyway, both of these lines, probably knight c6 would be followed up by e5. I think the idea is just kind of staying out of the way of this pawn if white wants to continue wasting moves on the king side, moving these pawns forward. You can just ignore it for a while, develop your pieces, maybe castle king side if it seems like queen side. I mean, it seems like things are getting too dangerous on the king side. But anyway, in the game, after g4, I went h6, and we're just out of the book. H6 still leaves an advantage to black, but not as big as it was before. And now we're in the range, and we stay for most of the opening in a range where it's not too far away from even. So both sides still have chances. It's not like black is winning or white is winning. He continued with h4, and probably if he had transposed into d4, that's probably the way to get more or less equal position here. But he kept kept on with his idea of playing on the king side here, and I went ahead and played knight f6. I had prepared this idea, so if he pushes now, I can just take and utilizing the pin against his undefended rook there, I can just take that pawn. And knight to f6 is attacking this pawn. But, well, once again, probably I should have been playing with the e5 rather than playing with the knight. But that's okay. Let's see. He played bishop h3, so he's defending that pawn. And then I went with b6. And once again, the chess engine wants me to play in the center with e5. I mean, it's a little bit mysterious, this move, bishop b7. You might question whether this is the right place for the bishop. Just defending a pawn here. But it does support a knight coming to e4, so it has some value, and the center may open up if I later play with c5. Let's see, so I went bishop b7, he went knight c3, and I went knight bd7. And now actually it's the chess engine is starting to change his mind. I've made a few slight mistakes, and this is another one. And it's getting to the point where white can maybe get a slight edge once again. So back to the situation where white has some kind of opening edge. Really, I should have kept that d7 square available for my knight and just played normally with e6. Just pawn to e6 there would be fine. The problem after knight bd7, he didn't really take advantage of this, but he could play g5 now. And g5, say my knight has to hop somewhere, doesn't really want to go back. This knight's on the way over here, so that's one of the things that's going on here. So goes to e4. Let's see, this is the chess engine line g6. So I don't know if I would have thought of this or if my opponent would have thought of this, but this is pretty strong for black. I mean for white. So this is actually this move here gives white an advantage. So if I take this pawn, in fact, white is just winning with queen g4. So he's now in a position, he's opened up these weaknesses on the, he's created these weaknesses on the king side, and he's in a position to exploit them before I've had a chance to get castled. For example, if I respond with knight to f6 here, then queen takes g6 is mate. There's no squares for the king, and there's nothing that can block. So could be a very quick demise there. Or knight e to f6, either way. But, well, f takes g6 is not a good move. But that means that white can get away with playing that g6 move. I can't take it. I should probably play something like e6, after which white can take. I have to take with the king. And queen to f3 could be played. That's a move. But strongest is actually knight takes e4, and then queen to g4. And now this is not winning for white, but it is an edge for white. So anyway, and it's a complicated position where anything could happen. So, you know, someone wrote in a comment to the live commentary version of this game, you know, why would anyone play like this? Well, this is why they would play like this, is because in unfamiliar positions, even if it's a bad position, your opponent can be making mistakes. And let's see, my mistake here was knight b to d7. But of course, if white is going to play like that, he's got to be alert to these opportunities. And the idea of pushing with g5 and then to g6, I don't know if that would have occurred to many players. I would definitely suspect engine abuse if somebody played this way against me. But actually, this is a position where white is a little better because of the inaccuracy of knight b to d7. Anyway, he dropped his bishop back to g2, so black is better once again. I played e5. That was a good move. He plays g5 now, and I take first and trade. Otherwise, my rook would have been hanging there. And then I played knight to e4. Didn't really like, the chess engine did not like knight e4. It wanted the knight to go to h7, which is available because the rooks have been traded off and put pressure on this pawn. And this is different. Now g6, you know, I can probably, well, maybe I just put the knight back on f6, but it looks like I can defend the king side okay, even though I haven't castled yet. He doesn't have as much force over here. And the queen is also threatening this pawn and looking at the knight there, which is undefended on the back rank. So this would still be good for black. I played knight e4, which is the move I had sort of planned. And he can take here and castle. I think this line also gives a slight edge to white. If he were to take here and play queen to g4, you know, activating his pieces over in the king side is really key for white, and this is a good way to start, to bring the queen out to make threats and then follow up with some of these other pieces. Let's see, queen e7, bishop takes e4. This is the computer line, and then I castle queen side. And it thinks white is about a pawn better, which if you count the material, white is a pawn up. So I guess that means I don't have time to exploit his king position. He's going to get castled. And, well, in fact, he can also trade here immediately if he wants to. That was one suggestion from the chess engine. And, yeah, basically white is just a pawn up here. So this was a second chance that white had to get an advantage in this game. And it was also the last one because instead of taking my knight, he took the pawn. And after this, I'm just better. So anyway, the moral of this is that even though white played a strange system in the opening that wasn't correct, I didn't find the best responses. And he could have had a good game, a game where he had an edge, maybe not a win, but an advantage. And instead he missed his chances. So if you're going to play those wacky systems, you can, but you really have to stay alert for those opportunities when your opponent strays from the path of finding the best move every time. Let's see. He took the pawn, and I just took back, and I think I stay a pawn up here. Let's see. He tried. No, the material is even here, but it's just I have the better position. And in fact, it thinks that the best move is to trade queens here. And, well, that activates my rook. So if we can look at this position, this is the best that white could have done after deciding to take the pawn first instead of the knight. And we see the materials even, 3 pawns to 3 pawns, 3 pawns to 3 pawns. I have the bishop pair, so that's one source of black's advantage. And I have an active rook on an open file, whereas his rook is in the corner. So this is a pretty good position for white, but I mean for black, but white could play on here. It's not hopeless. Anyway, instead of trading queens, though, he went queen h5, and there's just nothing going at this point. My king side is stable enough, and this pawn is kind of a thorn in his side. It prevents his knight from developing, it prevents his bishop from developing. So I've managed to get a clear positional edge here, even though the material is even, and yeah, the chess engine gives this as a winning advantage to black, which I keep for the next for the rest of the game. So I play some logical moves. I kick his queen. I was thinking maybe it would end up on a less attractive square. He comes back and hits my knight. So, but I can take this pawn. And this was a key idea. I finally found this move, but the chess engine had been suggesting it several times. Yeah, actually on move 11, queen takes g5 would have been strong. And as I mentioned before, one of the ideas with that is it's also hitting the loose knight there. I was kind of afraid of it because the queen is walking into this line of the bishop, but now that I have a solid pawn here preventing the pawn from coming forward, I'm no longer afraid of it. And I can just grab that pawn. So now I'm material up as well as having the better position. He tries to get castled and manages to. We both get castled, so logical play. And then I develop my bishop in a way to threaten his queen. He plays f4, but that just loses a pawn. But, well, he's trying to break out with his knight in some way. There's just no good way to do it, although in this position he could go with knight to g3 to kick my queen around, but my queen would drop back, and then this pawn would start to run. This is a very dangerous passed pawn here. So instead he played knight takes f3, which you know, you might have thought the chess engine would flag that as a mistake, but basically at this point white's position is so horrible that all these moves are losing, and it doesn't distinguish too much between them. So anyway, I take his knight with the tempo on the queen because queen is the queen is under fire from this bishop. So he escapes with a check, queen h3 check. I step to the side, plays e4, trying to maybe isolate this knight and take it off. So momentarily that knight is undefended, but I can just grab his bishop over here. He takes back with the rook, and the rook is just walking into a pin. And I played bishop f4, and he resigned. So a quick finish to that game, but there's the rook is pinned, so it can't move. There's 3 pieces attacking it and only 1 defending it, so he has no way to defend it. And I'm a piece up in any case to start with. So no shame in resigning at a point like this. Just one funny point I wanted to mention is the chess engine said that wasn't the best move here. In fact, there was a forced mate in this position, starting with queen g1 check. And well, I'll give the sequence that puts up the steepest resistance. It's kind of an Anyway, interesting sequence to look at. I mean, he could block with the rook, but then that would open up this diagonal for the check. So blocking with the knight gives the steepest defense here, is the stiffest resistance. Then I pin. So that's pretty natural. It's like what I played in the game, but I give the queen check first. Let's see. He plays a4 to give his king an escape route because I'm going to be crashing through here any moment. Notice that I could just take this rook now. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, there was no good way to defend that rook, so I take it, and now there's a discovered check looming against his king. So the king steps away from that, and then bishop to c8. Hey, I think this is a funny move. I could just take that knight, of course, that's hanging, and I would go with check. But in the interest of getting the fastest mate, bishop c8 to chase the queen. Queen runs over to c3. Then queen takes knight. King runs to a2. And then the bishop comes out to e6. So that was, repositioning the bishop so it could operate on this diagonal. It couldn't get to that diagonal directly from here because the pawn was controlling the d5 square there. So bishop e6 though delivers this check. b3 blocking. Now rook takes. And let's see, king to a3. Rook takes queen. King back to a2. Queen takes b3. King to a1, and finally rook c1 mate. So there was a forced mate in that position when I played bishop to f4. But I think in a blitz game we can be excused for playing a move like bishop f4, which was enough to cause him to resign. Anyway, it's a fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Bye.